March 11, 1945. At Kanoya Air Base on Kyushu, Japan, an intelligence officer's hand trembled as he examined reconnaissance photos. Submarine Y-47 had captured something near Ulithi Atoll that defied all understanding of naval warfare. A concrete vessel, unarmed, laden with heavy refrigeration equipment, and surrounded by small craft, transferring unknown goods. It was classified as an unknown logistics vessel, but it was unlike anything the Imperial Japanese Navy had ever conceived. While pilots at Kanoya meticulously extracted pine root oil, a desperate measure yielding meager fuel, and mechanics drained industrial alcohol for their aircraft, the Americans had deployed a $1 million floating factory. This vessel produced 500 gallons of ice cream per shift, 5 tons daily of frozen dessert. Meanwhile, 24 Yokosuka P-1Y-1 Francis bombers waited on the runway for Operation Tan No. 2, their pilots, many with less than 50 hours of training, preparing for one-way missions against the American fleet at Ulithi. They were flying into battle against an enemy that considered ice cream a strategic priority. The first whispers of this extraordinary American comfort had emerged through prisoner interrogations in October 1944, after the Battle of Leyte Gulf. Japanese sailors, rescued by American destroyers, recounted receiving medical treatment and food, including a bewildering frozen cream served in metal cups. The American sailor brought me what he called ice cream, one survivor reported. I had heard of this dessert, but never tasted it. Here, after the greatest naval battle in history, Americans were serving frozen desserts to enemies we had tried to kill moments before. Vice Admiral Takajiro Onishi, architect of the kamikaze units, suppressed these reports. His pilots needed to believe Americans were weak, easily broken. How else could Japanese spirit overcome their industrial might? The truth, he feared, would shatter what remained of their fighting morale. Commander Zenji Orita of submarine the Thurpa 47 provided the first official Japanese observation in December 1944. His log entry from near Ulithi read, 0630 hours, large concrete vessel observed, approximately 80 meters, no armament, heavy refrigeration equipment on deck, multiple small craft conducting transfers. This was the U.S. Navy's barge, Refrigerated Large, BRL, a converted Army concrete barge costing $1 million, over $17 million in today's money. It churned out 10 gallons of ice cream every 7 minutes, storing 2,000 gallons at 15 degrees Fahrenheit, operating continuously, 24/7, producing 500 gallons per shift. By January 1945, Japan's desperation was profound. Fuel was so scarce that the battleship Yamato trained at anchor to conserve oil. The Pine Root Oil Program, mobilizing 400,000 workers and millions of schoolchildren, yielded only 3,000 barrels of aviation fuel, less than the U.S. Navy consumed in a single day. Captain Minoru Genda, architect of Pearl Harbor and commander of Japan's last elite fighter unit, the 343rd Naval Air Group, witnessed his pilots suffer from severe malnutrition. Night blindness, reduced reflexes, and inability to withstand G-forces plagued them. My pilots' eyes fail them at night. Malnutrition has stolen their vision. They shake during combat maneuvers from weakness, Genda wrote in his reports, while acknowledging their enemy grew stronger daily. The contrast was most stark within the kamikaze units. Teenagers with minimal training received final meals of rice balls, dried fish, and ceremonial sake. They wore seninbari, thousand-stitch belts, as they penned their death poems. At Kanoya Air Base on March 11, 1945, one pilot's poem read, "Like cherry blossoms in the spring, let us fall pure and radiant." They flew to Ulithi, where one bomber struck the USS Randolph, killing 25 and wounding 105. The carrier was repaired in 3 weeks, during which its crew consumed an estimated 3,000 gallons of ice cream. Ulithi was a marvel, a tiny coral atoll transformed into the world's largest naval facility. By March 1945, 722 ships, more than Japan's entire navy ever possessed, anchored in its lagoon, staging for the invasion of Okinawa. Its facilities included floating machine shops, a fleet post office handling 20 tons of mail daily, movie theaters, baseball diamonds, a bakery ship, a water distillery, and of course, the ice cream barge producing 5 tons daily. The ice cream barge became a legend. Destroyer crews, lacking their own machines, would send boats with empty containers to return with gallons of vanilla, chocolate, and strawberry. It served everyone, from admirals to seamen, a testament to democracy through dairy. Japanese intelligence struggled to interpret American supply manifests, mistaking ice cream mix for ammunition, chocolate syrup for fuel, and strawberry topping for medical supplies. No military, they believed, would prioritize actual dessert during total war. Yet evidence mounted. Prisoners reported ice cream on every American vessel above destroyer size. Reconnaissance showed refrigerated vessels at every base. American morale supply tonnage consistently exceeded Japan's entire food rations for its fleets. Commander Mochitsura Hashimoto of submarine 158, later known for sinking the USS Indianapolis, made detailed observations. From his periscope, he saw floating cities of abundance. In his memoir, Sunk, he wrote, "While we counted our last torpedoes, rationed fuel by the liter, they maintained peacetime routines in wartime. This was strength we never imagined, the power to be comfortable during apocalypse." His executive officer noted sailors in lines at refreshment stands, transferring white containers, later identified as ice cream. Japanese pilots, shot down and rescued, reported treatment that contradicted their indoctrination. During Operation Kikusui, the massed kamikaze attacks on Okinawa, one pilot, captured after his engine failed, recounted, "The destroyer conducted normal operations during our attack. No panic. Men at regular stations except gunners. White uniformed sailors continued serving food. This was not the desperate enemy we expected." What he witnessed was American confidence in their defenses, allowing normal routines, even ice cream service, to continue under attack. By 1945, American ice cream production in the Pacific dwarfed Japan's entire food programs. The Navy's barge alone produced 500 gallons daily, supplemented by 3 Army barges, producing 1,500 gallons combined. Every carrier, battleship, and cruiser had its own machines. Annually, the military produced 80 million gallons of ice cream, shipping 135 million pounds of dehydrated mix in 1943. Japan's reality was grim: 3,000 barrels of pine root oil from 34,000 distillation units, aviation fuel reserves below 1.5 million barrels, civilian calories dropping to 1,680 daily, and pilots with 40 to 50 hours of training flying on 30% alcohol-diluted fuel. The entire Japanese military's daily rice ration was less tonnage than American ice cream consumption in the Pacific. Admiral Chester Nimitz, who personally approved the ice cream barge, understood that morale wasn't built solely on ideology and sacrifice. In a classified memo, he wrote, "The Japanese expect our men to endure their conditions and break. We will demonstrate that American industrial might extends to crew comfort. A sailor who knows his country can provide ice cream in combat fights with different confidence than one expecting only hardship." This philosophy was ingrained. At Coral Sea in 1942, sailors on the USS Lexington famously raided ice cream stores before abandoning ship, scooping dessert into their helmets. This priority was incomprehensible to a Japanese military culture that embraced suffering as virtue. Japanese naval officers grappled with the implications. How could they maintain morale when their sailors received 315 grams of rice daily, while Americans consumed 5 tons of ice cream from a single barge? Vice Admiral Matome Ugaki, who would lead the final kamikaze mission, confided in his diary after seeing intelligence reports on American comfort levels, "If such reports are true, we have misunderstood this war entirely. Spirit cannot overcome an enemy who brings luxury to battle." The information was top secret, officers sworn to silence, but the truth seeped through. Japanese radar operators noted B-29s circling at high altitude for no tactical reason. Post-war evidence revealed crews were making ice cream, mixing ingredients in ammunition cans, using the -50 degrees Fahrenheit temperatures at 30,000 feet to freeze and churn it. This level of confidence, making dessert over enemy territory that desperately launched fighters powered by pine root oil, represented a civilizational surplus applied to warfare. While Japanese mechanics drained hydraulic fluid for emergency fuel, American air crews improvised ice cream makers. Operation Kikusui saw 10 kamikaze waves hit Okinawa, with 1,465 aircraft and 4,000 pilots lost. Japanese pilots flew obsolete planes on diluted fuel, their final meals consisting of rice balls and water. After the April 6, 1945 attack, which sank 6 ships and damaged 22, American fleet reports noted, morale remains high. Ice cream consumption increased 40% post-action. The psychological impact of ice cream after combat, representing normalcy, comfort, and home, was immense. Japanese naval personnel captured at Okinawa, 11,250 in total, provided accounts that shattered Japanese assumptions. One destroyer officer, pulled from the water, recounted through interpreters, "I expected torture. Instead, a young American sailor brought me ice cream, vanilla, in a metal cup. He seemed embarrassed they had run out of chocolate. I cried, not from gratitude, but from understanding we had already lost. A nation that provides ice cream to enemies had won before fighting began." These accounts, suppressed during the war, revealed a gulf far wider than imagined. During the occupation, American forces distributed ice cream to Japanese children, many tasting it for the first time. The psychological impact was profound, disproving wartime propaganda about American barbarism. Lieutenant Saburo Sakai, Japan's leading surviving ace, tasted ice cream in 1946. He wrote in his memoir, Samurai, "I understood finally why we lost. We fought believing suffering made us strong. They fought with the confidence of abundance. We thought comfort was weakness. They knew comfort was a right their industry could guarantee anywhere." The statistical realities of the two wars were stark. America's industrial might could produce 80 million gallons of military ice cream annually, with million-dollar barges and machines on every major ship. Japan struggled to produce 3,000 barrels of pine root oil, its sailors rationed to 315 grams of rice, and pilots trained for a mere 40 to 50 hours on inferior fuel. For Japanese military culture, rooted in Bushido and the acceptance of suffering, American ice cream ships were incomprehensible. They saw comfort not as weakness, but as a strength multiplier, abundance not as decadence, but as strategic advantage. Captain Mitsuo Fuchida, who led the Pearl Harbor attack, later reflected, "I learned Americans fed ice cream to their enemies, not just food, luxury food. This was not the barbaric enemy we were told about. This was a civilization so confident in victory they could afford kindness and comfort during war." The ice cream ships challenged every assumption about warfare held sacred by Japanese military culture. At a 1985 US-Japan veteran reunion, the cultural gap remained evident. Former Seabee Robert Mitchell, who worked at Ulithi, casually explained the ice cream barge. "We figured boys fighting needed ice cream. Didn't seem special at the time. It was just what you did, take care of the troops. If we could build it, why wouldn't we?" This casual attitude that ice cream was an unremarkable provision of war struck former kamikaze trainer Tadamasa Itatsu deeply. "We trained boys to die with empty stomachs. You trained boys to live with full stomachs and dessert. This difference explains everything about the war." Dr. John Dower, in Embracing Defeat, concluded, "The ice cream barge at Ulithi was worth more than a fleet of battleships as a demonstration of American power. It said, 'We can afford this. We have already won. We are simply waiting for you to realize it.'" Military historian Richard Frank noted, "Japanese forces fought expecting to die gloriously. American forces fought expecting to live comfortably. This wasn't just a different strategy, it was a different civilization's approach to warfare." Today, at the Kanoya Air Base Museum in Japan, a small placard, added in the 1990s, contextualizes the impossible disparity. A kamikaze pilot's final meal, a rice ball, pickled vegetables, and sake, is displayed next to a photograph of the American ice cream barge at Ulithi. No explanation is needed. The image speaks volumes about the Pacific War. Museum curator Tetsuya Yamada explained, "When they see that America built ships just for ice cream, while we scraped pine trees for fuel, they understand it wasn't just military defeat. It was the collision of scarcity with abundance. The story of the ice cream ships reveals the true nature of power in modern warfare. Japan believed power stemmed from spirit and suffering. America demonstrated that true power lay in the ability to eliminate suffering, to provide abundance, and to maintain normalcy even in extremity. The war ended not when Japan ran out of pilots willing to die, but when its leadership understood they were fighting a society so powerful it dedicated ships to desert, so confident it saw comfort as essential, so abundant it could afford luxury during a global war. The final statistics tell the story: 722 American ships at Ulithi versus Japan's entire navy at its peak. 500 gallons of ice cream per shift from one American barge versus 3,000 barrels of pine root oil from 34,000 Japanese distillation units. American bomber crews made ice cream at 30,000 feet, while Japanese pilots endured 40 to 50 hours of training on diluted fuel. American sailors complained about ice cream flavors, while Japanese sailors received 315 grams of rice. The million-dollar ice cream barge at Ulithi, churning out 10 gallons every 7 minutes, was not just a ship. It was proof of a civilization that had already won the war before it began. In their world of bitter pine root fuel and desperate sacrifice, American ice cream ships were not just incomprehensible. They were proof that Japan had fundamentally misunderstood the nature of the war they were fighting. They had brought spirit to a contest of industrial abundance. They had brought suffering to a battle against comfort. They had already lost.